5 years ago, I made the decision to leave my 9 to 5 and never go back.
So it's Christmas Eve. We were unwrapping presents. A couple people called out today, and there's nobody else that can cover, so I'm on my way to cover. I had to leave early. Yeah, I'm pretty done.
At this point, I was a operations manager for a cleaning company, so pretty much whenever anybody called out throughout this company that had like 50 employees, I would have to cover for them. I'd worked my way up from being a cleaner myself, but it pretty much ended up that I was just like cleaning office buildings every single night, and that's the closest I've had to a 9 to 5. Like, I haven't worked traditional retail. Well, it turned out to be really helpful in my life. That was a really hard time for me, and it was kind of like this soul-crushing thing, and I'm actually really glad that it was, because I feel like if I had had a job that I just didn't really care one way or the other, it wasn't that bad, I wouldn't have had this motivation to get to that point where I was like, I will not be doing this next year. I will do whatever it freaking takes to get out of this 9 to 5 job, because I need control over my life. I need to do something that I actually care about. I need to do something that I feel like makes an impact on somebody's life, that I, am proud of myself at the end of the day. And it took getting to that point to make that change. And I can say a year after that, I left my day job and I have never gone back. And I was really thinking about it this week, and I never will go back. I never would ever go back to a traditional job, and I would do whatever it takes, to stay that. I actually left that job, like I talked about, the next year, and I took a very substantial pay cut down to almost nothing, but just doing different side hustle stuff. At the time, I was making about $500 a month on YouTube. I had 2 rental properties that I'd sunk my entire life savings into, and I was living in one for free and I was renting the other ones out. I had one of them I was running Airbnb in, so I had 4 different Airbnbs going inside one apartment, which was probably not the best idea. We had like homeless people there because it was like such a cheap apartment, but I was doing whatever it took to make enough money doing these different side hustles, which was YouTube, real estate agent, lost a lot of money on real estate, and then Airbnb, like I talked about, other side hustles, doing like construction stuff. And doing that and making 20 to 30,000 a year was so much better than the 9 to 5 for me, because I just hate that kind of structure where I feel like no matter how hard I work right now, I still have to clock in for 8 hours. No matter how hard I work, I will never be able to get a raise past a certain point. I might be able to get a couple percentage more, but there's zero chance that I'll ever go from, what I was making like 50K-ish a year to 100K. Zero chance that would ever happen. And as I've, kind of shifted over to, starting my own businesses, taking a lot more responsibility and control over my life so that I can earn zero, which I did for a little bit, or I could earn, multiple hundreds of thousands of a year, and that is completely up to me. But I was totally okay with earning, next to nothing in order to have that freedom back. And I think that's a shift that a lot of people I've been talking to are getting to that point where, we don't need a lot of stuff to make us happy. We don't need a huge house, a fancy car. We don't need, to buy stuff all the time or go on lavish trips. Most people would be okay living a simple life if they actually got to live their life and they weren't stuck, making somebody else rich 8 hours a day to just barely get by. And I think that's like a mindset shift that some people are into, some people aren't. Some people love the 9 to 5, and my idea is not like to dig that. It's a lot, maybe secure, and there's things like that. But for me, it was just a really stressful time for me, and I knew I had to figure out something else, and I eventually did. So if you're like at that point where you have a job that maybe you don't hate, but you don't love, it's like, okay, that's how people get trapped. I see people, like I've talked to people who are doing things for 20, 30 years when they just expected to be at a company for a year or two, and then 20, 30 years later, they're still at that company, they still haven't moved up, they still haven't tried anything, they're still tired, and they don't try to change their life. When they get home from work, they don't try to start a business, they don't try to do anything, and they just get stuck living this kind of like very boring, repetitive life that is never, I don't know, like I'd rather have the ups and downs than have a constant meh. For me personally, and maybe that's just because I never went to college, so I never had a lot of skills to be able to get like some exciting job. But you know, I guess I was like eventually able to make a little bit more of an exciting, you know, job that I do actually like. But I do remember like this constant stress and like lack of excitement that was in my life. And there was just, you know, always so much stress on me that like, you know, my sleep would go down. And for a lot of that time, I didn't have, you know, any friends outside of work, which is, you know, that wasn't just the 9-to-5's fault, like that was mine as well. But I felt like I just didn't have time for anything else besides working. And I was definitely, you know, living to work instead of working to live, which is, you know, you can do with any job. But especially for me, I feel like if I don't have ownership over what I am creating, it's really, really hard for me to get motivated about, you know, a bunch of things in my life, a bunch of different aspects of it, whether it's the health, the, you know, the diet, the working on your own projects, art, playing sports, any of that stuff. I had a lot more energy in life. My sleep was better, like my stress levels went way down when I had control back. And even though that control is like this idea from the book Extreme Ownership, where you're taking total ownership of like, if I fail, I fail, if I win, I win, but at least it was me who did it, you know? And for me, that's where I've gotten a lot more excitement out of life. And I feel like this video is like a bit of a downer, just like coming across as me hating on 9-to-5s. But I just know that there's this group of other people that I talk to that are in the same type of like mindset of like, I know that I can get freedom in 3 to 5 years if I lower my expenses, I build up enough income that I can make, you know, 3 to 5K a month, you know, working on a side hustle or different investments. And if I can just get to that, I can do whatever I want with the rest of my life. And that's what I've done. I literally got to the point where I was making 3 to 5K a month off of a couple different investments. It took me about 5 years to do. And then I was able to do whatever I wanted. For me, it was YouTube. I've, you know, taken time. I've been able to travel and travel very cheaply, which has been super fun, but also get to see the world and still work and make money and come back with more money than I left with, which, you know, like 8 years ago when I first read The 4-Hour Workweek, never thought it was a possibility that I could be that person. And because of that, for quite a few years, I never tried. And then when I actually started trying, it turned out that like, oh, I now am that person somehow, just because I, you know, brainwashed myself from reading 4-Hour Workweek, things like that. And like, oh, I can actually try building some of these businesses and just pick one and stick with it. And it can turn into something. And that's just like really, really cool and exciting. And fun. When you actually get to create your life and just taking the time to like, what would I want my life to look like? And for most people, I don't think it's working at a 9-to-5. If you write out your ideal week, I don't think you'd write down, well, I'd love to take from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or 9 p.m. to 5 p.m. or whatever it is to go work in a square box and do something repetitive and like statistics that you waste like 5 hours a day at your work. So you're not even doing that much stuff. It doesn't really impact anybody and you don't make as much money as you would like to, but it's, you know, it's fine and you know, it's whatever. I don't think that's what anybody's ideal week looks like. So what does your ideal week look like? How far away are you from like making that happen? You could be a year away. You could be like months away. It's probably not as far as you think. But you know, it takes literally like extreme. I'm going 0 paycheck. I'll make something work and then making something work. That's what it took for me. So that's what I had to say. Goodbye.